at the beginning of my second year at Keen, I really wanted again to make sure that we had this process in place. So I think process is really important. I read a book called Continuous Discovery from Teresa Torres. I keep it right here next to me because I'm constantly referencing it. She's amazing. She outlines the process of creating value through continuous learning, through assumption testing, through opportunity generation, all throughout that product creation process. And her examples focus mostly on the software industry, but they were super easy to adapt to the outdoor footwear industry. Again, it's a process. It's not necessarily about the product. It's about the process. So I used her book to, really inspire what I was working on at Keen. And I created a guide to continuous discovery. I adapted her work and created this kind of concise conversational guide that really illustrated the value of that type of work. And I showed what the process would look like for our teams. I met with key leaders from around the business, the brand president, the head of product, our CMO, and really started talking about what this could look like. Once I got their buy-in, then we were ready to roll. In the first season that we launched with, we did kind of a quick and scrappy version. I had like 2 weeks to get something, started at that point. And, but since then we've really, really worked hard to establish a process, and we're continuing to improve upon it, and we'll continue to improve upon it over time. So it's still new for Keen, but we made great progress already, and we're already seeing some impact.
Excellent. And for folks who may not be aware of the continuous discovery process, what would your recommendation be for those leaders? Like, if they leave this webinar, go to Teresa Torres's website and start to read up. What are the kind of the key parts that you would want them or would encourage them to take versus leave for their teams?
Yeah. So one thing that, I'll say, continuous discovery is for, I think, every insight professional and every team. She has a quote, continuous discovery is for product people who want to build products that their customers need and love. And I think, with insights being such a critical part of building products that actually solve needs for our fans and our consumers, it's for everyone. So I highly encourage everyone to go check out her blog. I get emails from her, a couple emails a week, I believe. Love her content. And really, I think the critical thing, we don't do every single thing that is in her book, right? So she has this amazing, super rigorous process. What I've found is that I have had to adapt it to meet where we are as a business and where we are in terms of our kind of savviness as in terms of how much everyone understands insights in the process. One thing I work really hard to do is to democratize research and to involve everyone. So, what that really looks like in practice might not be exactly what, where things are in her book. That's an aspirational point for us to reach. But what I would say is kind of start with what you can do and then build from there. So we've established a process. We're going to continue to get better and better and build on it. So yeah, I would kind of start with the basics and do what you can and build from there. So once you start seeing the impact, I think it'll just kind of snowball from there.
Awesome. And kind of shifting gears a little bit, or continuing on, is, Keen very clearly keeps its fans, which is what you guys call your customers, at the heart of your research process from beginning to end. Leveraging surveys, interviewing, diary studies, and more throughout the product creation process. Can you kind of walk us through what does this look like in practice, or like an example?
Yeah. So to share what this looks like, we've put together a visual. If you want to flip to that slide. Thank you so much. So this is a visual. We've kind of, removed some of the content from here, but we want to be able to show you what this looks like in practice. So we have what we call our product quartet, and that's really, leaders from product, design, marketing, and insights. And we work really well collaboratively together. And that's where kind of the strength of our work comes from, is making sure that everybody's working in lockstep with each other and that we're all working toward a desired outcome or outcomes for the season. So that's really critical. I should have said that, like, if there's one thing that you need to really focus on, it's starting with an outcome. So research is so much more impactful when you're starting with a clear outcome that everyone is aligned on. So what are we trying to achieve? That will inform the research that you develop and create. And then everybody is very clear and intentional on what we're trying to get out of this. And I think it motivates everybody. And it also makes it really clear, like, how we can work together toward that. So we start with aligning on our goals during our long range planning process. So that's all, all the way on the left there. And these goals really guide us. So again, like, we align on outcomes, and all of the seasonal work that we do focuses on achieving those outcomes. So with this visual, this kind of shows the key moving parts throughout the product creation process. Looking at the different teams in our quartet. So one thing to note is that our seasons start 2 years prior to a product launch. We call it preseason work that we do before we get to our kickoff. And merchandising, product, design, insights, everybody plays a role in the process. And, like, for example, during our preseason work, our design team and our product team, they're meeting with retailers, they're doing market research. They're going to retailers, taking photos of product and really kind of assessing what's out there and what's going on in the market. At the same time, my team is working on getting things going with quant and qual research. So this is where we do key driver analyses. This is where we do our deep fan understanding work on Dscout. And then that work is brought into workshops. So we identify opportunities. That's a critical part of continuous discovery. And those opportunities are then distilled, aligned on, and then those opportunities get passed off to our design and product teams. Again, though, everybody's kind of aligning on this every step of the way. And then our product and design teams draft briefs. And then you can see, like, there's a second half of the seasonal work where we lean more into quantitative testing to look at purchase intent, incremental reach, marketing optimization, and really kind of bringing it all the way to our sales meeting. With all of these pieces, we have this thread where we can see where fan insights has really informed the product creation process.
Excellent. I think until you showed me this, I had never seen something as in-depth as this before, especially like spanning all these different teams from the beginning versus like bringing people in more towards the middle and end. So that's amazing. I'm wondering if you want to, like, share like some more specifics of like a recent project where you actually like iterated and used this out in the wild.
Yeah. So very recently we launched some winter boot research. So actually tomorrow we have our seasonal kickoff for fall winter 25. And so we wanted to really, take a step back, understanding what was going on with our fans in terms of what their needs, wants, desires, pain points were, and when it comes to winter boots. So I just have like a screenshot on the next slide that shows, just one of our participants from Dscout, Anina. And she's one of about 60 people that participated in this research. And what we did with this research, we started with an outcome. We really wanted to come to the table in a strong way with our winter product and, really understand kind of the evolution of winter for our fans. So we started with the assumption that winter is changing, and with it, our fan needs are changing. And we needed to understand kind of where performance comes into play and where style comes into play. And so we're really intentional about creating, this work. So, an example outcome for this would typically be tied to a specific goal in terms of market share. So I won't share, specific details about that. But typically an outcome would be capture a certain, amount of market share or expand our business in this way, or become known as a brand that X, Y, or Z. So to better understand the opportunities that we needed to focus on, we did this research on Dscout. We used Dscout's diary tool. And we talked to our fans about what winter looked like to them, what they're currently wearing. We talked to them about their pain points, their desires, their needs. We asked them to shop for winter boots, and they one of the tools that I love on Dscout is the screen recording. So not only was it impactful for us in terms of understanding how people, shop for and what they're looking at when it comes to winter boots, but we also shared that with our DTC team and said, look, this is how people are shopping. These are the keywords they're using. They're really starting with Google and Amazon. And so now, our DTC team also has this great playlist of videos seeing how fans shop for winter. From there, we assign our keen teammates from around the business to observe scouts on Dscout. So, I set everything up so that they're responsible for reading through and viewing responses. They represent specific scouts at our opportunity workshop. I think at the next slide I show, what again, this is like a screenshot. I forgot about this slide. Sorry. So this is where we actually take all of we take everything that we're learning in Dscout and we use Lucid to create inspiration boards. Our inspiration boards are really important for our design and product teams, because a lot of the time we hear from fans and they say, oh, style is really important to me. What on earth does that mean, right? Everybody has a different perception of style. So basically we take everything that we're learning, products that they love, products that they hate. We're putting quotes from Dscout and images from Dscout into this board. And this is a board that I ask everybody across product design, marketing, insights to start adding to. So not only are we getting input from our fans on this board, we're also adding, if there are images from retail that we see, if we run into somebody and they're wearing something interesting, or we have an interesting conversation about, what winter boots are for them and why they chose the boots that they chose, we can add that to this board. So this is kind of a living, breathing board that we are going to continuously build upon for inspiration for future seasons as well. So the next slide is really that, is a screenshot of that opportunity workshop. So again, developing a process is super important. I created templates on Lucid for our opportunity generation workshops. And so what we did is we took all those findings from Dscout, from our Lucid boards, and then we brought that into this opportunity identification workshop. Basically what comes out of this, on the next slide, is identifying the opportunities that will most likely achieve our outcomes. So you can go to the next one, just a screenshot of an opportunity distillation workshop that I run. So after we've kind of gone through and identified pain points, needs, desires from our fans, and we've written them in the form of opportunities for Keen, then we take all of those key opportunities, and as a leadership team, we discuss them, and then we rate them based on, is this a real opportunity? What's the market size for this opportunity? How important is it to our fans? And how well does this actually fit with Keen and what we're trying to achieve for the season and for the business? From there, then we identify a number one and number two opportunity for our teams then to take, our product and design teams to take, and they build them into the briefs. So tomorrow in our kickoff, the opportunities that we identified from this winter boot research are fully visible in our briefs. So everything that we learned throughout this process on the front end of our season, I just looked through all of the briefs and our seasonal kickoff presentation. You can see all of this work reflected in what we're focusing on. We know it's going to achieve the desired outcome because, again, we were really intentional about aligning on that, researching that, and focusing on opportunities that will achieve that outcome.
That's amazing. I know you mentioned on the larger kind of calendar graphic that there were different moments where you were running the winter boot research using Dscout. Where does Dscout fit into like your overall discovery process, and like why is it important to you and your team, to run sometimes mixed methods research across the different points in the creation process? Sometimes you might lean on diary, as you mentioned, but are there times when you lean on other methods as well?
Yeah. I mentioned doing quantitative research as part of this and doing a key drivers analysis. So, one thing that we learned through that is the importance of style. But again, there's only so much that you can learn from a quantitative study. It's like, great, style is super important. What on earth does that mean? And so, for especially footwear and apparel companies, it's so something as subjective as style. So, that's a limitation that we run into with quantitative research, is that we just can't get that deep understanding of what that looks like. So, this working with Dscout and doing those in-depth diary studies, we actually get to see examples of what style means to them, what they love, what they hate, so that we can really understand like where is that polarization, and we can develop themes around that. Our design and product teams really benefit from actually seeing visuals. We have hundreds of images of products that our fans love and products they hate, along with quotes explaining why that is. Now we have a very, very clear understanding of what's aspirational for our fans, from a style perspective. We could not do that without Dscout.
That's always great to hear. I know like leaning so much on what you can get from, a really in-depth diary study, are there still moments when like the need to get a quick turn response is valuable in this process?
Yeah, I'd say this is especially important when we have a concept, or even, like we're in the sample phase and we really want to understand, overall what people are thinking. So, that's part of the continuous discovery process, is connecting with fans on a regular basis. So we aren't just kind of doing this inspiration work and then walking away from our fans. We want to have those quick, check-ins, whether we're talking about, getting feedback on a brand campaign or getting feedback on a product concept. So one example of that, a few days before we had a key, seasonal meeting, our utility team asked me if we could get feedback on one of their, key story products. We weren't able to kind of do that on the front end because, it was launching. I wasn't even at Keen when the product started and when the brief was built. But we were able to hear from 50 people, from 50 utility customers, and get feedback really quickly. Within 2 days, we had all the feedback that we needed on the concept. And, then we went into our sales meetings with having great quotes and videos of people talking about that product. So that's where I would really use Express, is getting quick, high quality responses. I can stitch together videos, and we can use close-ended questions. And, if we quickly reach 100 people, then we can feel pretty confident in being able to share results in terms of, purchase interest and intent.
Absolutely. And I think like this process that you're laying out at how, your fans are so present at every point in this whole life cycle, what would you say to a researcher who is looking to center their org's research practice around being more customer oriented to the extent that you are at Keen, kind of how to help others at their organization get on board with a similar mindset if they don't have it at the moment?
Yeah, so I would say, I think before I approached my research, solely as a researcher, and I think, a lot of time as researchers, especially, if there are people on this call, I came from the academic world. My whole career trajectory was focused on becoming a professor. And so, I approached research kind of academically for a while and really got in the weeds. I would, kind of share everything that we learned. And so what I would say is kind of like taking a step back and working really closely with partners from around the business, to understand what type of research and what type of findings really actually has impact. So I've been really intentional at Keen about understanding as much as I can about the business, about the products that we're creating, about how briefs are built, and understanding the timeline, so that, that screenshot of the calendar for the go-to-market process. that's really important to be able to collaborate and talk with teams from, other teams in our product quartet about, understanding like what is the cadence. If you are working on research at the wrong time, it's just not going to have impact. So understanding the cadence, understanding those points at which research really needs to come in order to have the most impact, and understanding what type of information is most essential to them in order to write their briefs. One of the questions that I often ask when we're getting research started is like, what do you wish you knew that you don't know now? And that often kind of helps me understand the gaps in knowledge that people have. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. I also think that, having a process, doing education. So, that continuous discovery guide that I wrote, really adapted that to Keen, kind of even like infused our fun and quirky vibe and conversational nature, and shared that. I presented at our monthly business meetings, and really just kind of kept on hitting on talking about what continuous discovery is, talking about the role of research in the go-to-market process, and just continuously educating. And I think the last thing I would mention there is really involving stakeholders in helping you improve upon the process. Kind of doing these postmortems and talking about, hey, how did that work? How did that opportunity workshop feel to you? Is there anything that we could do differently next time? And continuing to iterate on the process and involving stakeholders as your teammates, I think it's really important as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think like my core takeaway from speaking with you is that impact and action is like really at the forefront of the work you're doing, the work at Keen. So I'm curious, like to shift gears into how to measure impact, since there's so many ways. There's like the dollar value to the bottom line. There's like working with the team. How has this way of working impacted the other teams at Keen in terms of like fostering a more research-centric culture outside of insights?
Yeah, that fostering a research-centric culture is one of my 3 pillars of what I came to Keen with the intention to do. And so again, kind of a lot of the things I've talked about, and really, involving other teams and aligning on outcomes, and really, yeah, just kind of making sure that you're working collaboratively is super important. One, when we talk about impact, because we are working 2 years out, we have not been able to get to the point where the products that are actually out in the market have gone through this process. So that's going to start happening in 2025. So while we don't have actual sales numbers, there have been a couple of kind of things that we've learned throughout the process that I think actually, has impact without being able to actually have sales numbers. So one of the ways that I see impact is that, there's been a significant shift in how we talk about the fan and the importance of fan insights in the go-to-market process and in the brief writing process. So, again, like what I mentioned with our kickoff presentation, you can see, who our target fan is. That's coming from Dscout research as well, like really getting in depth about showing images of, what's aspirational to them, their influencers, and so on. That's all embedded into that. And then all of our product briefs for kickoff tie back to the insights that we learned from our research on Dscout. Whether we're looking at our performance or lifestyle categories, it's all tying back to that. And that's where I see the impact, is our teams are really injecting that, they're using it. And then we aren't kind of like going rogue after learning something, or kind of, it's actually carrying through in our briefs, and those briefs will become products that all tie back to this research.
Amazing. Yeah, I really love how you keep customers at the center of everything you do. Definitely is, I think, something that all brands should be doing to foster both, a love from new customers as well as continuing to keep like longtime customers happy. with that, I think we can shift into the question portion of our session. Um, I think the first question that we have, and folks in the audience, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box or in the chat, um, is you mentioned being able to show videos and quotes to the broader team. Is that something you share with leadership, and like how are they responding to actually being able to see what folks are saying from your studies compared to it being like distilled through your team?
Yeah, I think this is where, we also have a ton of impact. If, you know, in my earlier roles as a consumer insights professional, I think there are a couple of different ways that we can approach customer insights, consumer insights, fan insights. Um, I have worked on teams that felt more like consultancy or consultant, and like we own the research, we're doing it, we're owning it, we're writing the reports, and then we sit down and we share it, right? It's like, all right, here's a meeting, we're sharing the results. At Keen, part of being a fan-centered culture is making sure that everybody's connected to the fan. Everyone that needs to be connected to the fan is connected to the fan. And, for that to happen, that's where, I assign like every scout has somebody that is representing them. They're reading through all their responses. They're listening to their videos. And then again, we're taking those images and those quotes and we're putting it into that inspiration board. Everyone has access to that inspiration board. So that's where, again, like really involving everybody, democratizing research for me really means making sure everyone has a role to play and to access to the results. It's not just boom, here's a report. So yeah, that for me is really critical in terms of just making sure that everybody's involved.
Excellent. And then, oh, we're getting some more through.
Yeah.
What is an example of, I know it's always exciting. When you're at a webinar, you never know if you're going to get a whole flood of questions or none. One of them is, what is an example of an outcome that the teams align on? I'm curious how broad or specific they are and at what level they fly at.
Yeah, so that's where like I don't want to share an actual, business outcome for Keen on this call, but outcomes can really focus on and actually Teresa Torres does like if you Google outcomes, Teresa Torres and find her blog, she does an amazing job of giving examples of outcomes. And those outcomes can really be focused on it could be a dollar amount. It could be, this is we want to make X dollars or sell X pairs of this product or in this category. It could be more broad, like we want to be seen as we want to establish ourselves as a cool brand, right? So it could be this kind of like broad aspirational goal, or it could be like these are the numbers we have to hit, or we want to take 3% market share in this category. So it's kind of like what matters most to the business, what you're working on, and how, like how intentional you need to be to get there.
Excellent. The next one is, your title includes fan and the work you do centers around fans. How have you used this process and Dscout to find and nurture potential fans or customers?
Ooh, I like this. One of the things, I mean, this is part of the research, but it's also like kind of a sneaky way to get people to go and look at Keen. It's not the reason that we're doing that, but in almost all of our projects, we want to get an understanding of perceptions of Keen. And so, I'll ask people to go and look at Keen's social media, to go look at the website, to give feedback. I often ask, would you buy anything? What would you buy? If not, how are we missing the mark? So that kind of drives a lot of people to Keen to kind of, learn more about Keen. A lot of people don't know about Keen, especially our more style forward fans, because, it's an outdoor brand. A lot of people just aren't engaging with it. So that's kind of one way. We have not taken our fans and established more of a community, which I think is kind of a step, forward in terms of engaging fans and really building that sense of community and engagement. Um, so we haven't done anything like that. The last thing I'll mention with that is I think in order to kind of build our fan base, one of the things that we really need to understand is not just the people that like Keen, who wear Keen, who are even in the universe of Keen, but understanding people who are like, would not buy Keen, would not, like we did this outdoor sandal project, and half of the people that I recruited were people who hated outdoor sandals. So like understanding not just people who are in the market, but understanding, people that are kind of unreachable right now, like how can we get a little bit closer and invite those people into the category? They're harder to reach, but understanding their needs and like their turnoffs, I think, is really essential into bringing more fans into our movement.
Amazing. Um, Another question is how do
Andrew. I'm like, this is backwards. I want
oh
to know where Jody lives.
my gosh, wait, that's one. Oh, Michigander
Yeah,
here.
Michigander here.
Amazing. What are some ways that you track impact once the research and synthesis is done?
Yeah, so one of the things that, I talked about that kind of like first half of the calendar and then the second half of the calendar. One of the ways that we can, even before a product is out in market, one of the ways that we can quantify the impact is when we take those insights and they lead to our briefs, the briefs that are written, and then we're able to take a design, like a rendering or a concept, and we're testing that. And then we can actually quantify how spot on we are, right? Like when we're doing a concept test using our quant platform, or even like, talking to 50 or 100 people on Express with Dscout, we're able to see like, did we get that right? Right? Because sometimes we have an opportunity. It's like we have an opportunity to, create a shoe that blah, 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 that solves these problems or that fulfills this desire. Well, maybe our design team creates that product. Maybe it's not what people like kind of expected for it to look like. This allows really, quantify really early in the process. Did we get it right? Did we get the concept right? Did we get the style right? So that's what I would say for that.
Excellent. This one is how did the quartet initially get formed? Was it driven by a particular function, such as insights, or was it more top down? What were the main motivators or challenges that led to the creation of the quartet?
Yeah. So we had, it's funny because we had what was called the triad last year, and that was really focused on product, insights and engagement is what we call marketing, and then design. And this year, insights was brought into that quartet, which is really cool. So that really came more top down. That was the leaders from across the organization saying we need to do a better job of working together. I would like to think that part of that was, in the continuous discovery guide that I drafted. One thing that I kept talking about that Teresa Torres hits on in her book is that in order for insights to have impact, in order for the products to be, the products to be right, the marketing to be right, and in order to achieve those desired outcomes, everyone has to work together. So that's why, we've seen the impact of everybody working together. When I do our workshops, I make sure that people from around the quartet are grouped together in breakout rooms, everybody, working together on that desired outcome. That's where we have the most impact. So I can't take credit for creating the quartet, but it definitely came from a desire at Keen to make sure that everybody is working more closely together, because there was this recognition that outcomes are best achieved when leaders from around the business work together.
100%. I could not agree more. That was our very last question, I believe. So I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us, and a huge thank you to you, Aura, for sharing your insights, giving us a peek into this process at Keen. And I will be sure to share out the recording with everyone who was on the call, as well as a link to Teresa Torres's website and blog if you want to read more about continuous discovery as a follow-up from this conversation. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.